Syntax is usually what scares novice coders the most. It's not what we're used to seeing. It's a lot of funky characters that you probably haven't even ever typed out before. But it turns out that syntax is the best source of clues to look for. And professional coders use these symbols to read and understand code with ease. Not because they have vast knowledge from years of study, but simply because they've trained themselves to notice and interpret the most common symbols, as well as question whenever new symbols appear. So I'm going to show you all the most common symbols to look out for. We're going to give them names, and we will refer to them throughout our conversation. It's going to be your job to see these symbols not as inscrutable barriers to learning how to code, but instead as your greatest allies in interpreting and understanding what the code is really saying. So here they are. The first, and most important, are the braces. Sometimes called curly braces because of their curly shape, braces are used to contain an entire code block. So they are very handy at giving you something to look for that reduces what you have to focus on. They basically communicate, hey, everything between the opening brace and the closing brace is related and distinct. Use them to visually reduce the amount of code you have to look for at any given time. As you can see here from the example, with the braces highlighted in red, there's an opening brace and a closing brace. Sometimes they won't be on the same line, but between them contains a single block of code. Next up is the semicolon. This one should be a little more familiar. It's actually used in code to represent a completed statement, or the end of a line. If you see this, you know that everything that came immediately before it is part of one line of code. So for instance, again, highlighted in red, everything to the left of the semicolon in the example is part of that one line. So with braces and semicolons, you can identify blocks and statements. Now it starts to get a little subtler. You have to look for more details. So let's start with parentheses. Parentheses are a new concept. They are not going to be what you're thinking of when you see parentheses in written English. Instead, in this case, they're actually having to do with passing in input, passing in what we call parameters. They can also be found when calling a method or initiating a method. As an example, you might see an ask name method, and input would be my name, Adam. So you'll see these parentheses wherever something's being passed in, being offered up as an input. You're also going to come across brackets. These are squarish in shape, not like parentheses or braces. They don't have any curve to them. Brackets are primarily used for data objects, or the position of data in a collection of data. As you can see in the example, we have the number 4 contained between two brackets. The brackets are part of the definition of this int group, and 4 happens to represent is a clue to represent the number of elements in that group. Operators. You'll see these used all over the place. Operators may look similar to other symbols that you've seen before. We have an equal sign, an exclamation point, an ampersand, a plus symbol. These operators are not quite what you're used to. They're used for reference assignment and logic. So if you see these, don't automatically jump to conclusions. You're not shouting in your code when you use the exclamation point, and the equals sign doesn't actually mean equals. So be careful. Here are some examples. Don't worry too much about what this code is saying. Just notice that the symbols can be used in combination. You can have a exclamation point and an equals sign, what's sometimes referred to as bang equals, or 2 ampersands, 2 plus signs, 2 equals signs. So you'll see these operators used both individually and in combination. That's all of the syntax you really need to look out for at this point in the course. Braces, semicolons, again, those are the 2 most important ones. Then parentheses and brackets, and finally operators. So be on the lookout for these. These are the clues that are going to help you distinguish what's a block of code, what's the end of a statement, where are we passing some kind of information in, where are we looking at the position of data, or how are we interpreting the logic. So that's the syntax. Now, one thing that you might have noticed from my examples, there's this uppercase and lowercase lettering situation happening. And I would like to explain why that's going on. In Java, there are specific ways we use casing, or uppercasing, lowercasing, capitalizing letters. First off is camel case. This is the most common thing you'll notice in Java. Camel case, the first word of the phrase is lowercase. In this case, camel with a lowercase c. And then the second word in the phrase, or any other successive word, second, third, fourth, fifth, will all start with a capital letter. So in this example, case starting with a capital C. Camel case is used for method names. Whenever you're defining your own name for a variable, you'll see camel case used quite a bit. You will also see Pascal case. Pascal case is different from camel case, as you can see, because every word in the phrase starts with a capital letter. As an example, Pascal starts with a capital P and case starts with a capital C. Now, if you're familiar with other languages, you might have also seen snake case. Snake case has this underscore that joins each word in the phrase, and then all words are lowercase. Now, we are not going to use snake case. It's not part of Java convention. So ignore snake case for now. If you've been using it in another language, just understand that it's going to look weird if you program with snake case in Java. So now, whenever programming in Java or reading Java code, you should know your case.